For those of you joining us, the Danville Town Council meeting will begin shortly.
Okay, it's 5 o'clock, so welcome everybody to the regular meeting of the Danville Town Council for this September 21st, 2021. We'd like to go ahead and ask Marie Senseri to do the roll call, please.
Councilmember Fong.
Here.
Councilmember Stepper.
Here.
Councilmember Storer.
Here.
Vice Mayor Arnerich.
Here.
And Mayor Morgan.
I am here.
All council members are present and in attendance.
So much for that. Item 1.2 are announcements. Marie, are there any announcements?
Yes, this meeting is being held by teleconference only on Zoom, and a recording of this meeting will be made available on the town website, as well as any written public comments. And just to note, there were no public comments received by the town on any item on the agenda this evening. To provide live comments during the meeting, use the raise hand feature in Zoom. And when the mayor opens up the item to public comment, raise your hand. Your name will be announced and only your audio will be enabled. You're asked to keep your comments to 3 minutes, state your name for the record, and again, wait until the mayor has opened up the item to public comment before raising your hand.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's go ahead and move on to item number 2, and we'd like to bring our Danville Chief of Police, Alan Shields, on to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Alan?
Thank you. If everyone can place their hand over their heart and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much for that. We so appreciate that. Let's go ahead and move on to item number 3, which is our changes to the order of the agenda. Are there any changes to the order of the agenda this evening?
Mayor Morgan, there are no changes to the order of the agenda this evening.
All right, thank you. Item number 4 is for the good of the town. The good of the town is an opportunity for members of the public to address the town council on items that are not on the agenda this evening. However, note that the town council cannot discuss or take action on any topics that's raised under the good of the town. We may, as a council or as a staff, go ahead and defer it to a different date, but we will not take any action or discuss it. We will go ahead and open the item for public comment. Marie Senseri has mentioned before that all you have to do is raise your hand. She will call on you and you'll have 3 minutes to address the council. Marie, are there anybody listed for the good of the town?
There are no hands raised for the good of the town at this time, no.
Okay, seeing that there are none, we're going to go ahead and bring it back to item number 5. We'll go ahead and move on. Item number 5 is our consent calendar. The consent calendar are items that are considered routine in nature and usually acted upon in one motion by the council. However, somebody from the council and or the public can remove an item from this consent calendar for further discussion. Is there anybody from the council that would like to remove any items between 5.1 or 5.8? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and move into public. Is there anybody in the public, Marie, that would like to remove an item?
There are no hands raised for the consent calendar, no.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and close that to the public and bring it back to the council for discussion or a motion.
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve the consent calendar, item 5.1 to 5.8.
Okay.
Second.
I have a first and a second and a roll call that's coming up.
Okay, Councilmember Fong,
Yes.
Councilmember Stepper,
Yes.
Councilmember Storer,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Arnerich,
Yes.
and Mayor Morgan.
Yes.
The consent calendar was approved unanimously.
Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to item number 6, which is our communications. And this is an opportunity to hear from various departments. Tonight, we have the pleasure of hearing from our quarterly police department report by Danville Police Chief Alan Shields, who is once again joining us after that wonderful reciting of the Pledge of Allegiance. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Town Council. I appreciate the opportunity to come and join you tonight and speak about the Danville Police Department and express my gratitude for working in a community that is so caring and kind, and that allows us to do our best to do what we do. And I kind of want to repeat, I think this bears a little importance, especially given our time. Our mission is to make people's lives better. That is what we do. That's why we're here for the community. And our specific role in that as the police is to safeguard the lives, rights, and property of everyone we serve. And so what I'd like you to do is grab the annual report that you have, or the update that you have. And for those that are watching this remote, this will be on our Chief's Message webpage, and we will have this so you can download. And I will have some slides that I'll put up that will reference a lot of the content in here, so that even those that may not be here live with us in person might get an opportunity to see what some of the good accomplishments that your police department has done over the last about half of a year. So this will be a presentation of the Danville Police Department to the Town Council. And if you look at this first slide that I threw up, that is a picture during National Night Out. And this is a good event that we were not able to do last year. Fortunately, we were able to do that this year, and we had a pretty good turnout. And it kind of reminded me that there is a strong sense of community here in Danville. And that's something that, frankly, for someone that's in public safety, that is what we rely most on to do what we do. If I can get all of you to turn actually to the back cover, we're going to kind of take this in a little out of order. But
Alan, did you want to have this on full screen? If you want to share your entire screen, or would you still like the view that you have, which is all of us? Because we can, if you want to turn it to full screen.
Sorry, yeah, if you can put me
well.
on full screen, I think that would be the best.
Okay. Give you a moment to work that out and make sure that the general public has an opportunity to follow along with us, just in case they don't have this handout.
So Maria, is that something that I do?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, just go to share content. Have your application open, share content, touch it,
Oh,
and then it will.
okay, that's not how this was set up. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
All right, let me open it up.
In the meantime, this will be available to the general public to download. You said it's not available yet. So if somebody's watching and they would like to download this, it'll be available after this evening's meeting, is what I understood. So if anybody else would like to have a copy of this, you're welcome to go back onto the danville.ca.gov and pick up a copy or download a copy for further review as well.
There's also a link to it on the website on tonight's agenda.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So there's a link as well. And we are now sharing our screen. There we go.
All right.
Perfect.
Okay, so I apologize for that. Okay, so what you see our part one, or rather our collision rate is what's most alarming. The rate of collisions themselves is actually not very high. Those actually remain steady. And this is a comparison for January through June of 2021. And for that period, we actually only had one additional collision. So the total collision count remained relatively flat. However, if you look at the injury collisions, they went from 15 in the first 6 months of 2020 to 29 in 2021. And that's significant, but I want to kind of temper that a little bit, that it's still lower than in previous years prior to the pandemic. And also, we only have 3 categories of injury collisions. We have a non-injury collision, we have an injury collision, and then we have a fatal collision. So that injury bucket tends to be very broad and includes things like complaints of neck pains all the way through broken bones and anything other than a fatal collision. So It's not necessarily that people are being mangled on the side of the road. It could just be that there's a complaint of pain, and that gets counted as an injury collision. Staying on our back cover are Part 1 crimes for the first 6 months. And this is a comparison or a look at our first 6 months, January to June. If you look, we actually, for violent crime, we're actually doing very well. We have 7 total Part 1 reported crimes. And then we've got 11 burglaries, which is very, very low, 76 thefts and 9 stolen vehicles. And if I can put that in a little bit of context, if you remember back in 2015, our burglary rate back then for the entire year was 110. So that'd be about 55. So we're at about 20% of that for the first 6 months of this year. So that is really a reflection of our community just doing a fantastic job, and our police department doing what they do best. And that's to work to reduce those crime numbers. I think the biggest thing to note, though, is actually the thing that our detectives and our officers have probably the most influence over, and that is the closure rate. I put up the 2019 national average there for comparison. If you look on the violent crime, we've solved all of them, which is a good thing, right? That's we certainly want to make sure that we're doing our best to solve those. Burglaries, we have a little bit better than average rate, theft a little bit better than average rate, but these stolen vehicles, we're really knocking it out of the park there. We're recovering a lot of vehicles, and that 9 for the first half of the year is actually a relatively low number. So although we'd rather see no crime is a good day because that means no one's been a victim. We do like to see good work on behalf of our residents, our businesses, and then of course our staff here that are doing a good job. So this is an interesting story. If you turn to page 6, I actually included the entire letter here because I was so moved by the letter that a lady named Melissa wrote. And to keep it a little brief, she describes being involved in a traffic collision, being very distraught, having her child with her. But what I'd like to do is kind of read the last couple of lines because I think that's the key part. And this was, 2 officers, Officer Vince Barbero and Officer Emily Niebeck, just really going above and beyond and demonstrating what it is that Danville police officers do to provide service to our community. They checked back on her several times. It turned out her tow truck didn't respond. They went back out there after about 3 hours and helped her get a tow and a ride, and it just really went beyond what I think most people think when they think of service from the police department. So if I can read this, this is from Melissa speaking about the officers that helped her that night. I could not be more impressed with the extreme human kindness, professionalism, and just overall quality of the officers who shepherded me through the experience. They are a credit to your department, and the residents in Danville are lucky to have such wonderful, passionate officers serving the community. And I'd like to point out that is representative of all of the officers that we have working here. We strive to make people's lives better, and that means something to us. And we are grateful to work in a community that cares as much as the town of Danville does. And so this is just one of many of the examples of the letters and the commendations I get for our officers from the public. If you go to page 2 or 3, 2 and 3, we're actually highlighting some of our outreach efforts. We're happy to say that we're back and engaged with our community, and not just virtually as we do every Wednesday at 5 on 10/8, which is our Facebook and YouTube platform that we kind of open our doors, so to speak, for about a half an hour to the community and take any questions as they come. But we've actually been able to do what we call our high touch, our in-person events. So we've been out doing our coffee with the cops. In fact, this morning we were at the Starbucks in the Rose Garden. And what we've been doing is we kicked it right back into how we used to, which is we pick 3 locations throughout the month, and we pick them based on geography so that our customers, our residents and businesses don't have to travel far to see us. The whole point is we come out to them. And so you'll see us maybe in the downtown area. This morning we're in Rose Garden. Later on we'll be out east towards the Blackhawk area of Danville. And so the idea is to provide a connection with our community where they can provide us meaningful feedback on how we can do our job better for them. We also finished up our Citizens Academy. I know you're all very familiar with that, but our Citizens Academy is a 7-week program where prior to COVID, we'd have people come down live and in person, and we would open our doors and explain what it is we do, and we would have an enjoyable experience, and we would get, again, meaningful feedback from the people that we serve. We had to do it a little different this year. We actually did it via Zoom, and we were very grateful. We had a lot of engagement, a lot of good questions. We were able to present a lot of good content. But then at the end, as the restrictions for the pandemic started to loosen, we actually were able to hold one in-person class. And during that in-person class, we went out to our driving course where we showed them what it's like to drive the cars and the training that we received for that. But more importantly, we actually showed them our force options simulator. And the force options simulator is what we use to train our officers on how to deal with different scenarios. And I'm going to read from page 2 here, but one of our Academy graduates had made the comment that the force options simulator really showed how things can turn south in an instant in the field. And it's just another good example of the types of programs that we offer in the way of training. And I'm going to cover our training in a little bit, but that is one of the things that we share with the public and show them how we train, not just what we train. And so we're happy to have a lot of our public engagement back and really enjoying that connection that we're keeping with the community. All right, so page 7, at the bottom of page 7, below some of the little notes that we got from some of our little kiddos in the community, you'll see a quick summary about some of the training that we receive here in town. What I'd first like to highlight is some of the training that we do above and beyond. So we do identify people in specialty positions like investigators, and they'll go to specialized training for investigations. Our traffic officers will go to specialized training for traffic, how to reconstruct accidents, how to download data from cars, things that you need maybe a couple, maybe 2 or 3 officers to have. We'll make sure that they get that kind of specialized training. And we do have some crisis negotiators here. And so we send them to crisis negotiations, update training. And we do have some train the trainers here that actually train for active threat, active shooter type stuff for school protection. But I really want to highlight what all of our officers receive, every one of them. And if you look at the 2021 courses and the 2022 courses, what I did was I put the course headline, the name of the course, as well as the hours attended for that year. And this is mandatory training provided by the Sheriff's Office as part of the post-perishable skills program, and it's provided to all officers. And so if we look at a couple of the topics for 2021, defensive tactics, and every time you see defensive tactics or use of force update, I want you to put in your head, this isn't the grappling side of things. This is actually the policy side of things. This is the how we do what we do. These are the de-escalation tactics. These are the communication skills. It is very heavy in those components. And if we look at 2021, we can see some topics. We've got emergency vehicle operations, first aid, but I want to highlight, racial profiling, domestic violence update, defensive tactics, crisis intervention training. Those are the training topics that people often don't realize that we attend on a regular basis. I think they know that we go to the range and we do firearms training. I think they know that we do defensive tactics, but I think a lot of people in the public don't realize the amount of time and effort that we invest in a broad spectrum of training aimed at providing the best possible service that we can to the community. And I think just the standard training, not even the above and the beyond training, but just the standard training that we provide is demonstrative of the quality of training that our officers here receive in the town of Danville by way of the Sheriff's Office training program. So I've got a special update for you. This is a project that has been a long time in the making. It has been really pioneered on the west side of our county in our La Miranda areas. I know our fire chiefs at Ceramon Fire and Con Fire have worked hard to get this program. But this is something, when you talk about being responsive to the public, I would say over the past few years in public safety, we have heard that our public, they want to be known, they want to be made aware of the zones that they're in and how they would evacuate and where they would evacuate and have some information about their area. And I believe Zone Haven is that response. And I want to cover 2 topics as it relates to this Zone Haven website here. So this is a website that has a community facing portal, and it also has a public safety facing portal. So what you see on the screen here right now is the community facing portal. And this is located on page 4 and 5 of our update. But if you look, the photo to the left, you can see a few different examples there. So you see like a polygon, we call it, and that's basically a jagged line that follows a path over a map. And what that's representing right there, that's actually where the Dixie Fire is and was. And then if you look at the zones, there's like PLU-E039, like the numbered zones. Those are different geographical zones. And then you can also see that some of the zones are red and some are amber. And a red zone means that that zone is under an evacuation order. And an amber zone means it's under an evacuation warning. And so this will provide good information to residents should they go to that site. But I do want to remind everyone that we've got our way of notifying people is through community warning system, through Nixle. And in the update brochure, there is a link to both the community warning system and to nixle.com, so that should we have to activate this system, should we have to order an evacuation, we will make sure to put it out on our community warning system and Nixle. Those are the communication platforms that we have always used. One is Nixle, that's ran through the town of Danville, and the other is community warning system, which is through the sheriff's office. What this will also do is this will provide us counts. So if you see there's estimated population counts. Based on those estimated population counts, there are predictable daytime volumes of vehicles and nighttime volumes of vehicles, and also the number of structures that are there. What this will allow us to do from the community side is when we say that there is a zone between both fire and police that needs to be evacuated, we have streamlined the process of ordering that evacuation. Now, with Zone Haven, we'll be able to call up our community warning system partners at the sheriff's office and say, evacuate zone, like the zone example we have up is Danville 17. Evacuate Danville Zone 17. What we've done is we've pre-flighted the language in this system so that they can just hit the button and go. They can enter that data and go. We're not having to plan that and do those things on the fly. We've already gotten that coordinated ahead of time. So on the public safety side, there's a couple of interesting features. What I will say though is that your officers and your supervisors, and certainly me as the chief and our administrative lieutenant, Jason Ingracia, we're very, very good at this information already. But what it will do is it will provide us with predictable or estimated traffic counts. So we can say, we can select a few zones, like say we selected all of the zones on the west side of Danville. What it'll do is the Zone Haven site will say, okay, if you plan to evacuate all of these zones all at once, this is what your traffic load is estimated to be for that time of day. And what you can do is if you look at the upper left or the left-hand picture, you can see there's some intersections there where there's going to be some pretty predictable high traffic counts as it's moving towards as traffic would be moving towards the freeway. And what it does is it allows you to help plan where you might stage your traffic resources to control those locations. In the middle example, this is another interesting feature of this product, is it actually allows you to simulate a fire. So you can do a fire simulation and you can have that simulation run, and you can run through what it would be like to evacuate in a virtual environment, our physical environment. So there are some benefits to the public safety side, but we think there are good benefits to our public side as well. With that, I appreciate the time and I appreciate the opportunity to present about our police department. And again, I want to say that on behalf of all of our police that work here, we're very grateful to work in a community that cares this much about public safety. It really does make our job easier at making people's lives better and safeguarding the lives, rights, and property of everyone we serve. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you so much, Chief Shills. We so appreciate the update and a very, very fascinating information coming down with Zone Haven. If we can stop sharing screen, I'll go back to I can see the council, and I will ask if there are any questions or comments from council. I can see Newell's hand up, so.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Chief, it's always exciting to hear you talk. One, you live here, your family's growing up here. The empathy you have for people and all of our officers, when someone finds themselves in a circumstance that they need help from the police department, it's always great to hear how well that contact went and how hard our officers work to make the best outcomes. But what you first started out with was about traffic. I know you've done really extensive studies that show a direct proportion to the number of traffic enforcement that we do and the number of accidents. And the years that we had low number of, I hate to use the word tickets, but traffic enforcement, we had higher accidents and things. But I think we've also seen during the COVID experience, and this is nationwide, that traffic accidents are up everywhere. Where we had traffic loads between 50 and 70% of normal on freeways, we've had more accidents, more fatalities, and things like that. What's your thought, sort of on all of that logic? And I know we on the National Night Out, we told people that, a ticket is the last resort. We want to change your behavior. And if talking to you doesn't do that, then maybe that ticket might change your mind. But in fact, getting people to slow down does save lives. So what are your thoughts and what are you seeing in other communities and or specifically here relative to speeding, accidents, and things like that?
Yeah, so our accident rate is actually relatively low, but predictably it's still in our common locations. So we're seeing it in our downtown corridor. We're seeing it along Camino Tasajera. And so we tend to direct most of our enforcement there. And sir, you're absolutely right. There is a correlation between accidents and the number of tickets you write. The more tickets you write, the accident rate usually goes down. But there's usually a ceiling for that. And you can continue to write tickets, but the accident rate is going to stay the same. And this is where I'm happy to say, and you should be very proud of Andy Dillard, your transportation department manager, because he actually has a greater effect on the traffic accident rate than our police officers do, because a thoughtful and caring design of the road really does make our job in police a lot better. And so that's why we value the relationship with Andy. We understand that the fruits that can come out of that. And so we make sure that we maintain a good information flow between us and Andy to tell him where our trouble spots are. And he also has access to all of the data as far as where the accidents are occurring, what they're occurring for. And so there's always cross collaboration where Andy will point out and say, I'm seeing an uptick in accidents in this area for this violation. And we will direct our enforcement towards there. So we feel that between lots of different people taking a look at the accident problem, lots of good input that we get from our residents on where the speeding is occurring, where the stoplight runners are happening, that helps us to direct our resources appropriately. But you're right, there does come a point where ultimately we do have to write tickets, and we will write tickets and we will enforce in those areas. But we try to make sure that we send the message as well that we're not writing that ticket or doing that enforcement action for any other reason other than to reduce the collision rate and reduce that 48% increase that we saw in injury collisions. And that is the focus.
Yeah, well done. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Karen?
All right. Two quick comments. First of all, thank you so much to the police officers who were part of the 9/11 ceremony, as well as our council and mayor who spoke, and for you, Chief, for being there. It's really important that the community feel that support for the police. But this letter is amazing that somebody wrote a letter this long about your officers. And the part that I found most telling was the following sentence, because Danville, we always say events are Danville, kind of like Toys R Us. They define us, the community events that we have here. And the line in the letter said, the officers made me feel that I was important, that even though I was only passing through Danville, I was under their care. So don't we all wish, as we went through town after town, running through the county, that every police force made us feel that we were under their care. That's amazing, amazing statement. So congratulations to you, Chief, and to all the police officers that made that happen.
Thank you.
Robert?
Great. Chief, as always, wonderful report. Thank you for all that you do in the community. And I don't know if you have these statistics at your fingertips, but we're really proud of the fact that we have cameras throughout towns and all of our major intersections. Can you give us some idea of how many arrests we've actually have made over the course of, I don't know, you pick a number, this last year or so? I held on to 58 for the longest time, but I know it's got to be more than that now.
Yeah, and I apologize. That's not something that's actually easily tracked. And so we don't keep that as a regular part of statistics. And what we do is if we want to determine the effectiveness over a period, we'll actually do a study over a 6-month period and try to draw the data out, because it's not tabulated in the regular course of documenting the reports and doing the investigations. But I can tell you from walking down the hall anecdotally and talking to our investigators that there's not a week that goes by that there's not cases, plural, that are impacted by the use of the ALPR program. As an example, last Thursday, our officers had a catalytic converter theft that they were investigating. They were able to get a description of the vehicle, track it back through our cameras, determine the exact vehicle that it was, and then they went and did a probation search in a city on the west side of Contra Costa County, and were able to recover stolen property and property used to commit the catalytic converter thefts. And I think to date this year we've solved and caught 3 or 4 different catalytic converter thefts, some as a result of using our ALPR technology, and frankly, some using DNA. And our statement is, it's not the value of the theft, it's whether or not we can solve the case. So we're willing to use advanced technology to solve these cases, knowing that a criminal may come to town and not just commit that one crime, but they may be responsible for several. And our goal is to prevent future crimes and hold those people accountable for that committed crime here and now.
Love it. And so that goes from bench warrants all the way up to felons and everything in between.
Yep.
Good.
Dave?
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Chief, for the update and all you do for the town and what you do to protect the safety of our community. I don't know if many of you know, but I actually rode shotgun with the Chief when we were on National Night Out, and got a little bit more of a appreciation of what the Chief and his team do, because when you get out there and you talk with the community, or as they're interacting with the community, it's amazing the amount of respect and appreciation for your police team and what you all do to really protect their safety. But more importantly, being accessible and available to our community is amazing, and they really do appreciate it. I do have one question I'd like to pose to you, and it has to do with injuries. We're noticing that there's a growing prevalence of cyclists in the town, and you got respectful cyclists and you got novice cyclists that are learning to ride bikes. Do you have any detail or information as to the percentage of injuries or accidents that are driven or influenced by cyclists or related to cyclists? And 2, if there was a word to the community as to what could be done to avoid cyclist, pedestrian, car injuries, what would that be?
Well, I'm going to apologize. And first off, I don't have those types of statistics available. They are accessible. I know that Andy has worked with a member of our community, Al Kalin, who's he's an advocate for bicycle safety, and with his help, we've made some pretty good strides throughout the greater community in bike safety. As far as the message to send, and if you can tell over my shoulder here, I actually have a bike. I ride to and from work, so I see both perspectives. Anecdotally, I think we just need, as motorists, as pedestrians, and as cyclists, we just need to be more patient. It seems like it's the impatience and the talking on the phone that tends to get us in the most trouble. And actually, to drive that point home, I'll actually throw a couple of examples real quick. I was coming to work in the morning, and there was a high school aged male that was waiting at the light at Sycamore and Camino Ramon. And what I had seen was he was impatient. He looked, the light was red for us going north on Camino Ramon, and Sycamore, the busy street that we have, it was green. So he starts to go. What he doesn't see is he doesn't see a car coming westbound at 45 or 50 miles an hour. So I'm screaming at him to stop. Finally, as he gets the left turn pocket, he looks back, sees me. I point, look right. He slams on the brakes of his bike and barely misses getting hit by the car that never saw him. And so we had a cyclist that was impatient, and really my heart sunk. You know, I have a son that's his age that he also rides to and from school, and it just terrified the lights out of me. And I usually don't get terrified that easy, but that was absolutely terrifying. Another situation was I'm riding home from work and I'm coming on the Iron Horse Trail at our San Ramon Valley Boulevard there. And I pull up, I hit the button, light turns green, and I can see that there's a car coming and they're not slowing down. And they ran the stalest red light you can imagine. And they just weren't paying attention, and they're sitting there on their phone. And so inattention by the driver, impatience by everyone seems to be what we're seeing when we're looking at the underneath part of the accidents. You know, the primary collision factor may be speed, it may be running a stop sign, but when we look at why it happened, it's usually inattention, not being patient.
Great, thank you.
And I'll work with Andy Dillard and our traffic supervisor to get you to see if we can get a percentage of accidents that are a result of bicycles.
Okay, thank you.
Sir.
You know, we continue to evolve as new technology comes out, and I consider that a cross-pollination of everything from our police department to the knowledge of our employees that are working with the town of Danville. What a great partnership and collaboration between departments to make sure that we have the latest and greatest. We just had Paul Holes on the Town Talks, and one of the things that he had mentioned was these type of incidents that happened back then couldn't happen now. They could in a different way, but because of the ALPRs and everything else that we have, the chances of somebody wanting to do those type of things has really lessened that crime rate on that particular end of things. And so I think it's phenomenal to see the it looks like you want to have something to say about that as well. Did you want to say something about that, Ellen?
Well, I watched the Paul Holes presentation that you put on, Mayor, and it was absolutely fantastic. And you're right, it does show the collaborative work that people do and the advancements in technology. It reminds me of the case that we had here in town, the Virginia Vincent case that was solved just due to advancements in technology and DNA, and our crime lab at the sheriff's office just being phenomenal. But that was a pretty incredible town talks. I was happy to see that you got Paul Holes to come out and talk.
Yeah, he was very, very fascinating. The other thing I wanted to mention to you was the Zone Haven. How exciting is that? Now we have a new app that's coming out and a new way for our community to stay alert and get warnings, everything besides Nixle and everything else. You mentioned that it's coming out before the end of 2021. Do you have a kind of a launch date on that, or when will we know?
Yeah, and I make sure to understand this is a countywide initiative, and it's being driven as a team and a group. And what's happening right now is we're going through and we're making sure that the zones themselves are jurisdictionally accurate, and then the data within them is correct. And so we're in that stage now, and as soon as we review that, then we'll be able to go live. But it's a collaborative process. We're working with San Ramon Valley Fire, which never miss an opportunity to give them kudos. The fire department is absolutely fantastic, and they're always innovative in providing great services. And so I'm happy to be working with them on this project.
That's nice to hear that collaboration as well. So the other thing I wanted to ask you was, speaking of simulated events, because you mentioned the Zone Haven, the active shooter drills, I know that the town of Danville has been the lead on that. And, you brought the sheriff in, you brought SWAT in, you brought the fire department in, and it's been such a great collaboration. Will you be using the Zone Haven to do simulated events as well?
There is that opportunity, but really when it comes down to it, what I've seen from some of the neighboring agencies that have done these simulations is there's an advantage to doing them for the public safety side, but the residents, there's not as big of an advantage, because simply evacuating is getting in your car and driving. The coordination, the execution of the evacuation really relies heavily on our law enforcement officers. And frankly, as a sheriff's office, we've evacuated communities over and over and over again over the last several years, and we've done so successfully when we've had fires across the county. And so it's not high on the priority list, And actually, and since you brought it up, I did want to touch on and we call it active threat, not active shooter anymore for here.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's a terminology, but what I want to press, because when people hear that, they often go to one singular component. And the reality is that is actually about stopping a threat and saving lives. And the second component is the one that we spend a lot of time concentrating on. And again, I feel like it's been anecdotal central tonight, but after one of those trainings where we focused heavily on tactical medicine, applying tourniquets properly, packing wounds, within the very next week, we had an incident where a young man was working a saw and actually didn't do so well with it, had a pretty catastrophic injury. And one of our motor officers was there within a couple of minutes and was able to apply a tourniquet so well, saving the person's life and actually providing the opportunity to reattach some of the fingers and whatnot. So it's a really good life-saving training. I just don't want it to get pigeonholed as something that it isn't, because it is something that we work hard to make sure that we are here serving the community to safeguard people's lives. Yeah,
Absolutely. And not just the elderly, but as well as the young children. So I think it's a great opportunity for all of you to show your stuff. So I want to thank you once again for being here with us this evening. It's always informative. It's great to keep up on what's happening out there. Thank you for all you do. Please let your officers know as well. Thank you for all you do for keeping Danville safe, making it the safest city, as well as town in the state of California. We appreciate that as well. So thank you again, Alan, for being here, and also for your rendition of the Pledge of Allegiance. We appreciate that as well.
Thank you. And as always, it's a pleasure to serve the town of Danville. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and next on our communications, we're going to go ahead and move on to item number 6.2. And item 6.2 has been a very busy time for the last, I won't even say month, let's just say the last week. And our Deputy Town Manager, Diane Friedman, is going to update us on our legislation. Welcome, Diane.
Thank you, Mayor Morgan. Good evening, Town Council. I am pleased to be before you this evening to provide this legislative update. I have a very large smile on my face. I am pleased to announce that the legislative session has closed as of September 10th. The state legislative session officially ended. That was the last day for bills to be passed out of their respective houses during the 2021 legislative session. As of September 10th, the bills moved to the governor's desk, where he has 30 days or until October 10th to either sign, which means that he approves the bills, or veto the bills. If the governor signs a bill, it is then chaptered into law by the California Secretary of State, and it takes effect on January 1st, 2022. A few days after the bills take effect, the January 3rd, 2022 session reconvenes. Governor Newsom was successful in defeating the recall, and as of last week, he began to sign or veto the 2021 legislative bills. At the beginning of the legislative session, there were approximately 2,276 bills that were introduced. 1,100, a little over 1,100 made it out of the session and were sent to the governor. So he has 30 days to sign or veto those 1,100 bills. The following bills have been signed by the governor and will be chaptered into law. Senate Bill 8, and this is under housing. Senate Bill 8 extends SB 330, which is the Housing Crisis Act, from expiring in 2025 to 2030. This bill is aimed at streamlining the production of housing, freezing development-related fees upon a builder's submission of a preliminary application. It sets a cap on the number of public hearings for development and prohibits local agencies from any actions that would reduce housing capacity. The town opposed this bill. We also submitted a letter requesting that the governor veto this bill. He signed the bill last week. It will be chaptered into law. Senate Bill 9, this is the bill that was signed last week, receiving lots of press attention. It is the bill that is really credited with eliminating single-family zoning in the state of California. It requires the local government to ministerially approve either or both of the following: a housing development of no more than 2 units. This is also referred to as the duplex bill on a single family lot. Additionally, this bill would require local governments to ministerially approve a lot split to create no more than 2 new parcels of approximately equal size, and not to a minimum size of 1,200 square feet for each lot. And upon invoking a lot split, an owner can add up to four total units on a single family lot. There is some language in this bill that would impact the ability of an owner to invoke the lot split provision. A local agency may deny an urban lot split. We are considered an urbanized area. If a building official makes a written finding that the proposed development project would have a specific adverse impact on public health and safety or the physical environment, and for which there is no feasible mitigation option. Also, if the site is located within a historic district, if the parcel contains rent-restricted housing or has been occupied by tenants in the past 3 years, if the parcel has not been established through a prior lot split. There is also a 3-year residency requirement for an applicant of a residential lot split from the time of the lot split. There are provisions for against short-term rentals of less than 30 days on the property, and local agencies are not required to permit any accessory dwelling units or junior ADUs on these parcels. Moving on to Senate Bill 10, another bill which we opposed. Senate Bill 10 authorizes the city to pass an ordinance to zone single-family parcels for up to 10 units of residential density if the parcel is at a transit-rich, jobs-rich, or an urban infill site. This bill removes the ability of voters to pass a ballot initiative to override these decisions. This bill requires a 2/3 vote instead of a simple majority of local elected officials to pass such ordinances. We also submitted, a request for the governor to veto. He did sign this bill last week. It will be chaptered into law. Other bills that we are awaiting action by the governor that are currently on his desk under the housing area is Assembly Bill 215, which is a planning and zoning law, housing element violations law. We also oppose this bill. It provides the Department of Housing and Community Development with additional enforcement authority for local agency violations of specified housing laws and increases public review for housing elements. At least 90 days prior to the adoption of a housing element, a revision of a housing element, or at least 60 days prior to a subsequent amendment to a housing element, the planning agency shall submit a draft housing element to HCD, and HCD is required to notify the local agency and authorize the department to notify the Attorney General if the local agency has taken action in violation of specified housing laws. This bill also authorizes HCD to appoint or contract with outside counsel if the AG declines to represent the department in specified actions related to their enforcement authority. And this bill also requires local governments to make the first draft revision of a housing element available for public comment prior to submitting it to HCD. Another housing bill that is awaiting the governor's signature or veto, at which we also oppose, is Assembly Bill 602. It's a development fees impact fee nexus study. It requires that impact fees nexus studies must identify an existing level of service and a proposed new level of service and explain why the new level of service is appropriate. It also requires HCD to create an impact fee nexus study template and authorize local jurisdictions to use the template. So we continue to see that HCD and the California legislature is continuing to impose state legislation that is overriding local control on housing. Moving on to environmental bills, Senate Bill 619. This authorizes a local jurisdiction that is facing continuous violations of regulations adopted pursuant to SB 1383 to submit a notice of intent to comply to CalRecycle. If approved by CalRecycle, the jurisdiction is eligible for an administrative civil penalty relief through the 2022 calendar year. This really gives us relief because SB 1383 is taking effect on January 1, 2022. It provides local jurisdictions with a little bit of relief from civil penalties as we come into compliance with some of the procurement requirements of this bill. AB 843. This bill would allow a community choice aggregator, or CCA, which MCE, our electricity provider, is a CCA, to access a biomat program, which is an existing state program that supports the development of renewable bioenergy electricity projects. Bioenergy is generated from organic waste and helps divert waste from landfills. This bill would help MCE tap into funding for biomat facilities. Biomat electricity is one of the single most impactful resources that we could use to meet our SB 1383 procurement requirements. So that is an important bill for us, and we support this bill, and we are hoping that the governor approves it. Under mental health, the Mobile Crisis Supports Team 988 Crisis Hotline. This is Assembly Bill 988 from Assembly Member Rebecca Bauer-Cahan. This legislative vehicle to help support a statewide 988 behavioral health crisis line has not moved forward in the legislative session. However, there was a recent allocation of $20 million for the project by Governor Newsom that is keeping the state on track to meet the July 2020 federal deadline for the mental health crisis hotline implementation. The recently appropriated $20 million comes from a pre-apportioned Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration grant that was included in the 2021 budget. With this implementation of the federal hotline, there will be an anticipated 300% increase in calls expected next summer. And this $20 million state investment will help filter to existing suicide crisis hotlines for the workforce investments, training, and capacity expansion. And what they're hoping is that in the 2022 legislative session, they can reconvene and start talking about how to support this program and the longevity of the program that will be dependent on further legislation and budget allocation. And that is going to be integral in 2022. We continue to watch and support this bill. Under sales and taxation, Senate Bill 792, that is Senator Glazer. This bill, it's a retail bill or an online bill for annual sales of tangible personal property that is transacted online that exceeds 1 million, to have the California Department of Tax track the zip codes where the purchaser resides for each sale within the state that it is transacted. This is a critical first step in the process of online sales tax reform. It will help shine a light on a major and growing problem in California. And it is something that will help bring revenues back to individual cities for online sales. The next bill, and we support this bill, and we are hoping that the governor also signs it. The last bill that we are still tracking under public utilities is Senate Bill 556. This is the measure that requires local governments to make space available to telecommunications providers without recognizing local authority to manage the public right-of-way preserved under federal law. And this is all about small cell wireless infrastructure. And we oppose that bill, and we are sending a veto request, and we are hoping that the governor vetoes that bill. Moving on to federal. On August 30th, Mayor Morgan and fellow mayors from the Tri-Valley Cities Coalition of Livermore, Pleasanton, Dublin, and San Ramon participated in a second round of federal advocacy meetings with staff members from the House Appropriations Subcommittee for Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development, the District Director for Congressman Mark DeSaulnier, the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Intergovernmental Affairs at the U.S. Department of Transportation, and the Legislative Assistant to the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. During this round of advocacy meetings, much of the focus was on transportation. Specific topics highlighted by the mayors included some highlighting the federal funding to the Tri-Valley and Central Valley, where there is congestion for people in search of more affordable housing, and how we have been able to leverage that funding to support improvements to two of our major highways, including Interstates 580 and 680. And how federal funding through the Transportation Enhancements Program, now referred to as the Transportation's Alternatives Program, has worked towards completion of the multi-use paved trail that connects the residential commercial areas with public transportation, schools, parks, and community facilities, also known as the Iron Horse Regional Trail, and how important that is. The mayor stressed that as we continue to work to complete the trail and improve crossings, they emphasized how important federal funding was for building and enhancing recreational trails. Additionally, the mayor stressed that the coalition is continuing to work to advocate for federal discretionary grant programs that support the Valley Link Rail project, which would connect the Altamont Corridor Express, or ACE train, with the Bay Area Rapid Transit, or BART. Moving on to earmarks, the federal infrastructure package is still being negotiated by Congress. The Tri-Valley Cities earmarks that were submitted as part of this bill were removed during the Senate negotiations on the bill. This includes the Valley Link funding. We were recently informed by Townsend that the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee has included a $20 million earmark for the Valley Link project as part of their transportation earmarks in the Invest in America Act, which passed the House in July. The town's earmark requests for the traffic signal modernization project and the Iron Horse Trail pedestrian improvement projects have also been submitted in the Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development Bill. Final resolution of these requests we are hoping to hear in this fall. The town continues to advocate for local control and provide legislative outreach information on our advocacy efforts to our community via this monthly legislative update to the town council, the legislative committee, which will meet on next Tuesday, which is September 28th at 9 a.m., our quarterly newsletter, the Town of Danville website, meetings with community groups as part of our Housing Element 101 sessions, social media, the TBC quarterly meetings, and our Danville legislative framework. We will continue to advocate for local control. And with that, Mayor Morgan, I will turn it back to you for any questions.
Thank you for that thorough report. We so appreciate it. Are there any questions or comments for Diane? Diane, thank you for all your work you've done. I know it's been a very trying time in legislation. I can say from my standpoint, we have definitely tried to advocate the best we can. And I shouldn't say the best we can. We advocated hard for our community and did all that we needed to do. And the outcome is what it is, and now we just have to move forward. So with that being said, like I said, there are no other questions or comments for Diane? Oh, Newell, okay.
I would just echo what you said and, one out. Diane, thank you for the advocacy. We've done deeper dives in everything. It is challenging. I know our local legislators are doing their best. But I think it looks like it's going to pivot all of us to work even more closely with the League of California Cities to look at our next steps, because I believe on some of these SB 8, 9, 10 that have passed, I think those need to go to court. Because if those bills, particularly SB 9, had been before the public, that the surveys show that it's 80% of our population would be against that. How dare this legislature try to do some slap in the face for all of us for doing a good job to now destroy all single family housing in the state of California. When just like we all dress differently, we have different personalities, we have different backgrounds, we have different job skills, and we live in different places, whether we live in an apartment, a studio, an accessory dwelling unit, or a single family house, a condominium. All of those housing choices are choices we have. And the legislature has just went off on a tangent that is unacceptable. And just appreciate your personal advocacy to help dig deep on all of these to get us the best information. And I know Renee, our mayor this year, has just fought hard on all of these issues. So thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Newell. And you know, and from that standpoint, also the ADUs that have come down, the control that's taken away from us on that as well, the placement, and that's been a difficult pill to swallow as well. So it's unfortunate because what happens is it comes back to a local level and our constituents are asking us why, and we have our hands tied. So I think, Karen, you had some comments?
Just briefly, I really want to thank you, Diane, for bringing this full circle before we start the next session with another 3,000, 4,000 bills, because I'm sure it will be even more now that they've been meeting in person instead of in Zoom meetings. You've done an outstanding job, Diane. It's just so frustrating. It's frustrating to talk to people at the farmer's market about this. They don't understand how this can be. They're starting to see ADUs that they don't understand how they're allowed in the size that they are and the closeness to other dwellings. And it's going to become, and not necessarily all here in Danville, but yes, one couple blocks from me, actually. So they are starting to be there and they are going to have an impact, and they're not going to look like something that you were ever asked to approve, even though that was your neighbor or your neighborhood. So it's going to have a huge impact, and we really have to thank the people who've taken such a great interest, have responded to our newsletter. Awesome what was in the newsletter for them to vote on how they feel. And as we go forward on housing that has even more impact on the housing RENA numbers, I hope those people will stay involved and give us their feedback, because it has been invaluable to have some people in the community standing there with us and supporting us as we go through with the league to fight for local control. And good comments there, Newell. Thank you.
Thanks. Robert?
Great. Diane, as you know, we've all thanked you privately for doing such good work with the legislature and writing letters. And what I want people to understand is that the mayor, this council, the staff, and especially Diane Friedman, has done an exemplary job looking at all the nuances of each one of these bills and how they affect the town of Danville. You mentioned 2,276 bills, of which you probably have 11 or 1,200 of them on your radar. And no, the outcome on 8, 9, and 10, no, I never thought we would eliminate single family zoning in California. It didn't even seem possible to me, but this legislature, this governor has figured out a way to do it. And I agree with Newell and the other fellow council members that if you don't appeal this or fight this changes the complete dynamics of our neighborhood. And I know there's a lot of exceptions here, but it's still, on the surface, this changes our neighborhood. And it doesn't even seem possible that we're having this conversation, but here we are. But let's do the thank yous first. Thank you for fighting on our behalf. Thank you for writing the letters. Thank you for understanding these bills before we understand them, and then going through it in a very concise way to explain them to us. And I appreciate that. And then once it peaks and it hits our radar, then we're learning a little bit more about it, and then we're offering input as well. But Diane, good job. Outcome wasn't exactly what we had hoped for, but we're not done yet. There's still a lot more work to do, but thank you for all your good work with this.
Thank you.
Dave?
Yeah, and again, thank you, Diane. And I'll I can't add any more to what my fellow council members have stated and described, and most importantly, what our position is relative to, I'll call it the behavior of our state legislature. However, at the same time, I'll take a little bit of a win, and I'm glad to hear at least we've got on the governor's desk an opportunity to get some relief on SB 1383, which would have been a really, really bad bill for us to have to comply with, especially since it's encouraging that we buy dirty energy in an environment where we're supposed to be buying clean energy, which to me doesn't make any sense why the left hand and right hand don't get it in trying to support clean energy. But a little bit of a win with that one bill, and I'll take that all day long. But again, as my fellow council members have said, this is not a very good public policy environment that we're in today, and we need to take a stand and draw a line in the sand and say this is not acceptable. And more importantly, it's not just the town of Danville. It's pretty much, I would say, a majority of the jurisdictions in the state of California. And I think as we take a look at how we work more closely and collaborate with those jurisdictions, we do have one common goal, which is let's do the right thing.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other comments or questions? Thank you, Diane. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to item number 7, which is our town council updates. Are there any updates from the council? Okay, I'd like to mention, Karen.
Just one, because this Thursday I'm going to the East Bay Economic Development Alliance fall membership, where they're going to issue the East Bay Forward, which is the vulnerabilities that came out of having COVID and the effects on the economic situation going forward. So I'm sure we'll all be able to get a copy of that. And secondly, that the speaker at that is Dr. Pastor's USC Equity Research Institute is going to talk about the impacts of COVID and how it revealed the vulnerabilities in our society. So.
Great. Thank you for representing it. That we appreciate that. And I'd also, speaking of representation, like to mention that 3 of the council members, myself included, will be attending the Cal Cities 2021 annual conference in Sacramento, beginning tomorrow and ending on Friday. So you will have your Danville representatives full force up there as well. So thank you for everybody for being here this evening. If there are no further reports, Rob?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Morgan. Just one thing real quick. One of the bills that Diane did not mention is AB 361. It was urgency legislation that is going to allow cities and counties to continue to hold Zoom meetings,
Right.
As long as the state emergency is in place. We just want to confirm, Maria and I do, that that it's the desire of the council in the short run to continue doing that. And if so, we will place an item on your 1st October meeting, because the legislation requires us to make certain findings in order to continue to do virtual meetings. So unless we hear otherwise, we will put that on your first October agenda.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up to our attention. We appreciate that. I mean, these are different times for sure. I don't see any objections. If there is, can you please let me know now? So please put that on the agenda. We appreciate it. Thank you. And on that note, I'd like to go ahead and thank you all for being here this evening and have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.